You lived for 3 years before you started forming memories. 3 entire years of experiences, emotions, and learning. All gone. You can't remember your first steps, your first words, your first birthday. It's all blank. This is not because you forgot. Your brain never stored those memories in the first place. Scientists call this childhood amnesia, and it affects every human on Earth. Today, we're going to explore why your brain refuses to remember your earliest years and what this reveals about how memory actually works. Let me start with what we know happens. Most people's first memory is from around age 3 or 4. Some people remember things from age 2, but those memories are rare and often unreliable. Almost nobody has real memories from before age 2. The first 3 years of your life are a complete void. This is strange because children are learning more during those first 3 years than at any other time in their lives. They learn to walk, to talk, to recognize faces, to understand emotions. They form attachments to parents. They develop personalities, but they remember none of it. Your brain is working during those years. You're forming memories in the moment. A 2-year-old can remember where their toy is. They recognize their parents. They know their routine. But these memories don't last. They fade within days or weeks. Something prevents them from becoming permanent. Scientists have studied this for over a century. Sigmund Freud coined the term childhood amnesia in the late 1800s. He thought children repressed early memories because of traumatic content. He was wrong. The real reason is more interesting and has nothing to do with trauma. The first clue comes from brain development. The part of your brain that stores long-term memories is called the hippocampus. In infants and toddlers, the hippocampus is still developing. It's growing new neurons at a rapid rate. This process is called neurogenesis. Here's the problem. When your brain is generating lots of new neurons, it's harder to maintain stable memory circuits. Imagine trying to save a file on a computer while the hard drive is being rebuilt. The constant changes disrupt the storage process. New neurons integrate into existing circuits and can overwrite or interfere with stored information. Research on mice supports this. Scientists increased neurogenesis in adult mice and found it made them forget recent memories. They decreased neurogenesis in infant mice and found it helped them retain memories longer. The rate of neuron growth directly affects memory retention. But neurogenesis alone does not explain everything. The hippocampus is functional by age 2. Children at age 2 can form some memories. Yet most people still can't remember being 2 years old. Something else is happening. The second factor is language. Before you have language, you can't encode memories in words. You experience the world, but you have no way to narrate it to yourself. Memory and language are deeply connected. Most of your memories are stored as stories you tell yourself. Without language, you can't create those stories. Studies show that children's earliest memories often date to when they started talking fluently. The more language skills a child has, the earlier their first memories. This suggests language provides the framework that makes memory stick. Think about how you remember things now. You remember events as narratives. I went to the store and bought milk. Even visual memories have a story structure. Language gives you a way to organize and retrieve experiences. A pre-verbal child experiences the world but has no way to narrate it. They see colors and shapes, they feel emotions, but they can't tell themselves, "I'm at the park with Mom." Without that narrative structure, the memory has nothing to hold on to. The third factor is sense of self. To remember something, you need a stable sense of I. You need to know that the person who experienced an event is the same person remembering it later. Very young children don't have this yet. Between ages 2 and 4, children develop what psychologists call autobiographical memory. This is the ability to place yourself in time and understand that you're the same person across different moments. Before this develops, memories don't attach to a continuous self. A 1-year-old lives in the moment. They don't think, "I am experiencing this and I will remember it later." They just experience. Without a sense of continuous self, experiences don't become personal memories. They're just things that happened. Research shows that children start talking about themselves in the past tense around age 3. They say, "I went to the park yesterday," instead of just "park." This shift in language reflects the development of autobiographical memory. They now understand they're the same person who existed yesterday. Culture also plays a role. Studies comparing different cultures show that children from cultures that emphasize personal storytelling remember earlier events than children from cultures that don't. Western cultures tend to encourage children to tell their own stories. Asian cultures often emphasize group narratives over individual ones. Children whose parents talk with them about past events using detailed, elaborative language develop earlier memories. Parents who say, "Remember when we went to the zoo and you saw the elephants?" help children build narrative memories. Parents who don't engage in this kind of conversation produce children with later first memories. This suggests that memory is not just a brain process, it's also a social process. You learn how to remember by being taught to narrate your experiences. But here's something interesting. Even though you can't consciously remember your first 3 years, those experiences still affect you. They shape your personality, your attachment style, and your emotional responses. The memories are gone, but the impact remains. This is called implicit memory. It's memory without awareness. You can't recall the events, but your brain learned from them. A child who is well cared for develops secure attachment. A child who is neglected develops anxious attachment. They carry these patterns into adulthood without remembering what created them. Your earliest experiences literally wire your brain. The connections that form during those years become the foundation for everything that comes later. You don't remember the experiences, but your brain does. The memories are stored in your neural architecture rather than in accessible form. This explains why therapy for childhood trauma can be so difficult. People know something is wrong, but they can't access the memories that caused it. The trauma affected them before they could form explicit memories. The impact is there, but the events are invisible. Some researchers have tried to recover these lost memories. They use hypnosis, guided imagery, or other techniques. But most scientists are skeptical. They think these recovered memories are usually false. The brain creates stories to fill in the blank spaces rather than retrieving real memories. False memories are easy to create, especially for early childhood. When parents tell stories about your early years, your brain can turn those stories into false memories. You remember the story, not the actual event, but it feels like a real memory. Studies have shown that people can be convinced they remember things that never happened. Researchers tell subjects detailed stories about events from their childhood that were invented. Many subjects later claim to remember these fake events. The memory feels real, even though it's constructed. This means even the few memories you have from age 2 or 3 might not be reliable. They could be reconstructed from photos, family stories, or later experiences that you've backdated in your mind. Some people claim to remember being born or being in the womb. These are almost certainly false memories. The brain is not developed enough at birth to form the kind of memories that can be retrieved later. What people are remembering is probably a constructed narrative built from imagination and suggestion. There are rare exceptions. Some people have highly superior autobiographical memory. They can remember almost every day of their lives in detail. But even these people don't remember much before age 3 or 4. The childhood amnesia barrier seems universal. Here's what this tells us about memory. Memory is not a recording. It's not like a video camera that captures everything. Memory is a constructive process. Your brain decides what's worth remembering based on many factors, including brain development, language ability, sense of self, and social context. The fact that you can't remember your first 3 years does not mean those years didn't matter. They mattered enormously. They shaped who you are. But they shaped you at a level below conscious memory. They wrote your code without leaving a record you can read. This has implications for how we think about identity. Are you the same person you were at age 1? In one sense, yes, there's biological continuity. In another sense, no. You have no access to that person's experiences. The connection between infant you and adult you is different from the connection between 10-year-old you and adult you. It also raises questions about consciousness. If you experience things as an infant but can't remember them, were you conscious? Or does consciousness require memory? Can you have experiences without later access to those experiences? Most researchers think infants are conscious. They feel pain, pleasure, and emotion. They're aware of their surroundings, but their consciousness might be different from adult consciousness because it lacks the narrative structure that language and autobiographical memory provide. Your consciousness now is a story you tell yourself about who you are and what you've experienced. Infant consciousness might be pure experience without story, present-focused without connection to past or future. Some meditation traditions describe this as a kind of enlightened state, being fully present without the mental chatter of memory and story. Perhaps infants naturally exist in a state that adults work years to achieve through meditation. But there's a cost. Without memory and narrative, there's no learning from past mistakes, no planning for the future, no sense of progress or growth. The infant's present-focused consciousness is simple but limited. As your brain develops and you gain language and sense of self, you trade that simple consciousness for a more complex one. You gain the ability to learn from the past and plan for the future, but you lose the ability to be fully present without the interference of memory and story. Childhood amnesia marks the transition. Before age 3, you live in the moment. After age 3, you start building a continuous narrative of your life. The memories you form after that point stick because they become part of your story. The ones before don't stick because there was no story yet to attach them to. So why can't you remember being born or learning to walk or saying your first word? Because your brain wasn't ready. The hardware for permanent memory storage wasn't fully built. The software of language and self-concept wasn't installed, and the social framework for narrative memory wasn't established. You experienced those moments. They happened, but they happened to a version of you that didn't yet have the tools to turn experiences into retrievable memories. That version of you lived in pure experience without the ability to step back and say, I will remember this. The first 3 years of your life are gone from your conscious mind, but they're preserved in your neural wiring, your emotional patterns, and your way of being in the world. You carry them with you even though you can't see them. They're the foundation you stand on without remembering how it was built. If this explanation of why your earliest memories are missing made you think about consciousness and identity in new ways, hit that like button and subscribe. We're exploring the mysteries of the human mind and how our brains create the experience of being ourselves. Ring the notification bell so you don't miss our next investigation into consciousness, memory, and what makes you who you are. Drop a comment with your earliest memory and how old you think you were. Your brain's story starts earlier than you remember.